This is Dan Lawson from the Alliance for American Manufacturing. I'm here in Bucksport today with Don McLaughlin, local union president for USW 261. Don, can you tell us a little bit about your experience in the paper business?
Well, I worked for first of all, most people call me Magoo. My name's Don Magoo McLaughlin. I was raised in Millinocket, Maine. I worked for the Great Northern Paper Company up there for 30 years till they went bankrupt in January of 2003. Then I did some odd jobs. I went to school part-time for about a year. Then I worked construction for 3 or 4 months out on the road, and I see a job advertisement for temporary work here in Bucksport, Maine, at that time International Paper Company. And I applied for a job, and I get hired for the summer temporarily, get laid off in October, and then they hired me permanently that November. I've been a little over 5 years with permanent employment here in Bucksport. So total time, I've spent 36 years in the paper industry in the state of Maine.
Now, Magoo, you were at Millinocket when that mill closed. What was the whole spectrum of emotions that people went through when that happened?
Well, they were pretty wide-ranging. We knew that the company was in trouble. We didn't know how bad it was. And, you know, they filed for Chapter 11, and the creditors immediately forced them into Chapter 7, so that tells you liquidation. You didn't know how long it was going to take. You didn't know what was going to happen. You just knew you didn't have a job. Well, at that time, I was chairman of the Millinocket Town Council. We had to freeze all the budgets where they were. We had to eliminate some things. We were worried we hadn't got our property tax from the company at that point in time. We had enough surplus that we could have covered the budget from it, but we would have been really, really hurting the following year. We eliminated, temporarily shut down sports programs. We had put a freeze on hiring. We were lacking in the police department and the fire department. We couldn't hire anybody because we didn't know if we were going to have the money to pay them. People on the street, in the homes, they didn't know what was going to happen. You know, a lot of these people were getting ready to retire, and they put their retirements on hold. Property values went through the floor. Right now, today in Millinocket, Maine, you can buy a house for $30,000 to $40,000. It would cost you $300,000 down here in Bucksport.
And as far as the people, did a lot of people have to leave the area to find meaningful work?
A lot of people left the area. When at the peak of the Great Northern years up there was 9,000 to 10,000 people living in Millinocket. I think this year's census will probably show it's closer to 3,500, maybe 4,000. Prime example being myself. I left Millinocket permanently 4 years ago.
So basically the impact on the town, the tax base had to get hit hard. Property taxes went up, like you said. But what the people, what did they do as far as for work? What was there available to them?
A lot of people went to school. A lot of people knew some people in the logging industry, like the Pelletiers, the American Loggers. A bunch of people, they had some work available. A lot of these people eventually went back to work in East Millinocket and Millinocket because a company called Brascan bought the mills, the assets of the Great Northern out of bankruptcy in April of 2003, and they restarted the East Millinocket mill. And then they restarted the Millinocket mill. And when they restarted the East Millinocket mill, they brought a number of people back to work, but with greatly reduced benefits, greatly reduced pay. And when they started the Millinocket mill, it was the same thing. When the Great Northern went bankrupt, there was 1,100 odd people working for the Great Northern. Right now, today, there's approximately 450 because they have shut down the Millinocket mill, and it'll probably never run again, regardless of what they tell you.
Now, as far as other businesses, did you see a ripple effect to all the small businesses in town that all of a sudden now people didn't have the discretionary income to buy snowmobiles or go out to dinner a couple times a week?
The snow sled industry does pretty well in that area because of people from outside. It's probably the low end of the northern, what they call the northern tier of snow sledding. So that really didn't get hurt a lot as far as that goes. But a lot of the local restaurants, a lot of the local small businesses either went out of business or see their sales greatly reduced, had to lay people off. There's still a lot of them are still hanging on. They've revamped up there and adjusted. But the amount of people employed in small business up there is greatly reduced, unless they happen to be in a tourism industry. Okay, that fluctuates depending on what time of year it is. A lot of people left the area. It's just traumatic. As you know, you get all these people from overseas, they sell their stuff over here for nothing, and the ones who pay for it are us.
Now, we're taking this case, the paper case that New Page, Sappy, Appleton Farm Paper, and the USW, it's going to have a hearing. If you were able to tell the hearing board anything about the manipulation of currency or what's happening here at home and how this affects them, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to make trade fair, because trade is not fair. NAFTA was such a great thing. Well, we used to have a balance of trade balance with Mexico. They imported probably $10 billion worth of our goods every year. It was to our favor. Now we have a negative balance of $65 billion. That's stuff from Mexico coming into the United States. And the reason that happened is because all these part suppliers, auto companies, rubber companies, chemical companies, sourced their jobs down in Mexico because they could pay people half as much money, maybe even less than that, and sell the product for the same price in the United States of America. So we lost, I don't know how many thousands of manufacturing and service jobs, because there was truck drivers and stuff involved in it too, because of NAFTA. Free trade don't work. Fair trade does.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for your time and appreciate all your comments there. Thank you, Magoo.
You're very welcome, Dan. Good luck. We need help.